Hello. Welcome to the Well of Being podcast. I am MEC. I am a medical student and content creator, but really I'm just a human who is navigating my own brain, just in a more public sense. And today's episode is going to be about returning from a not so great space, because that is my recent experience right now. I had a period of time where I was not functioning properly, to be honest with you. One could call this a depressive episode. My therapist did. I can call it, you know what, a girl wasn't feeling great. Regardless of what you want to term it, I had like a period of maybe 2+ weeks, probably closer to 4, where I just was not feeling joy in the things that I was doing. I was not getting work done. I wasn't doing well in school. Wasn't doing well in relationships either, to be honest. I was moody. I was like not energetic. I swear I knew something was wrong when I spent a good 14 hours in my room once. I like came out, for the necessary bio breaks, right? And then went back in. And my room, for reference, has no windows. It's completely dark, unless you turn on a light. And that is a depressing space to be in for more than, sleeping hours. Okay, so a girl wasn't feeling great. And kind of emerging from that not so great headspace has been very interesting to me because I've never really been in a low space for that long, to be honest with you. I'm one of those people who fluctuates very quickly up and down between like, you know what, I'm feeling really great right now. And then like I'll be like anxious for a little bit and then I'll feel good again. It's not really where I'm going from being really happy to being really like apathetic. It's more of I'm going to anxious. So I'm not really used to this and I wasn't really a fan of it, to be honest. Who would be? But I think just like coming back from that headspace has been very eye-opening in a lot of ways, because how do you deem your return to normal, right? I made a Pinterest idea pin about like that feeling when you first start to feel like yourself after you haven't felt like yourself for a long period of time. It's like this really nice, like breath of fresh air, but also you're like, oh my goodness, I was not myself. Like there's nothing that makes you more aware of the fact that you've been in a funk than when you like get that glimpse of yourself and you realize, wow, I was really not feeling it for such a long time. And it's kind of sad and it's kind of scary. It's relieving provides a little bit of relief, at least for sure, because you're like, oh, this is a return to normalcy. I recognize this. But who I've been for the past 2 weeks or however long you're having that, I did not recognize that. Is that part of me? Is that like going to be a thing that comes back? I hope to God not. So it's like it can be seen as something that's very like relieving and this like feeling of calm after the storm. But it can also be like looking back, what the heck? What I was not functioning, and I still managed to live, every day, and I'm proud of myself for that. But why on earth did I feel like that, and how can I avoid that? Bad boy again, because I'm not interested. Truly, I'm subscribing to those feelings. In particular, I think I felt it the most in relationships, like when you become distant from people because you're like, I'm dealing with my own crap right now, and let me tell you, there's quite the pile of crap behind me, so I'm going to go and mind my own business and kind of seclude myself, for better or for worse, because sometimes it's really helpful to have peeps supporting you. And I think often many of us, including myself, tend to run away from people when I'm not feeling good, for many reasons. One, because I'm like, oh man, you know what I don't want to be? A burden, which you're not, which I have to tell myself. I have Post-it notes around my room that tell me things that my brain needs to hear more frequently from me, and that's one of them. I have audio recordings of people in my life saying, "You are not a burden" on my phone. Helpful tip, but I'm still learning it. I think it's different to hear something and know that that's probably true than to believe it. And I think that that's something I struggle with. In addition to that, I also just avoid people because I just don't. I know what it's like to be around somebody who ain't feeling it and they like to drag other people down with them, and I don't want to be that type of person, right? I don't really identify heavily with feeling not good, despite the fact that I acknowledge that I, struggle with mental health in some capacities. I still view myself as an overarchingly joyful, humorous goober of a person. I don't really identify with being sad, okay? And so I don't want to be around people when I don't feel good, right? I don't want other people to perceive me as negative Nancy or just being depressed. And part of it is because I think that the way that we want to safeguard the way we are perceived by other people, especially people who we like. I want to preserve this persona of me that is cheerful, bubbly, happy, funny, and can provide you with advice, okay? That's what I want you to see me as. I don't want you to see me as someone who hasn't, showered today, hair's a mess, hasn't spoken in several hours, is sitting there watching Pokemon for 8 hours, which I did. That is my go-to dissociative show. If I want to dissociate, you'll see me watching Pokemon. And it's just I don't want you to see me that way. So therefore, I will not see you at all, right? Because I want to safeguard the way that you see me in this positive light. And there's two things wrong with that, right? The number one thing is that you are a complex person. You're not a TV villain or character. You've got layers, okay? As the onions have layers kind of thing. And you don't have to be, no one is going to be happy all the time. And I think we know that, but I don't think that when we're oh, that applies to other people. Other people are allowed to have bad days or bad stretches of time, but we won't allow ourselves to have those bad stretches of time because we have a double standard for ourselves, right? Other people are allowed to have issues, but I'm not. I think that happens very frequently to me, especially as a resident people pleaser and perfectionist, right? I just want I acknowledge the fact that other people may have difficult spaces, but I don't acknowledge my own. And I think that that's something we all can resonate with. So yeah, I think that was not very helpful. So I was going from being in my room and not really interacting with people. And then suddenly I was I'm feeling this gentle lift of whatever this depressive episode brought. I'm okay, I'm getting more energy. I'm feeling more social battery, so to speak. And so I was okay, you know what? This feels better. Let me go back into the world and, experience things. Go to friend events and hang out with family and stuff like that. And it had this weird quality to it. If anyone's ever, when I talk about the word, dissociate, what I'm saying is not what would be consistent with a clinically diagnosed dissociative disorder, okay? I want to be very clear about that. I don't want to spread misinformation here. When I use that term, I mean colloquially, from my experience, I don't feel like I'm in my normal headspace. It feels like I am observing from a very far perspective. It doesn't feel like I'm right there in the moment. I feel like I'm somewhere else, or I'm trying to go somewhere else, okay? So that's when I say that, that's what I'm trying to say. And I just felt like I was just observing social situations and not really interacting directly with them, because I was wow, all this was going on while I was in my room doing nothing. I missed all of this. was just very hard for me to jump back in, and I've never had that experience before because I'm a pretty sociable person. I enjoy talking and making dumb jokes that people laugh at, like maybe like 2 out of 6 times. I'm proud of that. The 2 out of 6 times. Why did I not just say 1/3? Couldn't help you. Couldn't tell you. Anyway, it was just like really weird. I was not a fan of feeling that way because I just felt like, man, even though I'm feeling better, I still don't feel quite exactly normal. And it's just like one of those things that's like kind of discouraging because you're like, I'm supposed to be better already. I'm supposed to feel normal. I'm like, I don't feel like completely down in the dumps like I did before, but I'm still not feeling quite MEC-ish, you know? And I was not a fan of that experience. Another thing was, a lot of times when you're depressed, right, you lose interest in things that you like to do. For instance, you didn't see me on this podcast for a period of time because your girl was not functioning. And I only think that it's fair that if I'm talking about mental health and like respecting your boundaries and kind of taking breaks when you need to, that if I am not loving what I'm doing in this space, that I'm not going to make content because I want it to be honest, right? And so I stopped making content for a while. And that's something I really find fulfilling. Even though it's work for me, it makes me feel fulfilled. And I'll probably do another episode on like self-care in a more sustainable way, because I think in order to like really care for your soul and your brain, you know, you have to do something fulfilling, not just pleasurable. You have to have a mix of pleasurable and fulfilling things while also mitigating things you don't like doing, right? And making them less scary. But yeah, it's just really weird to go from doing a lot of stuff that you love to do and stuff that you have to do. Right? Obviously, I don't love everything, every task that I'm given, to doing nothing. I was doing truly nothing. And it makes you think like, oh man, I was doing so much. I was doing so much before this period of time. I didn't feel great. And then now I'm doing nothing. And then once you recover from feeling like garbage, you're like, oh my God, I have to get back to doing all those things. It's just daunting because like, while you think that your social battery is back, you think that your energy is back, it is I think, for me, it was this like steady like incline back to normalcy. I wanted to believe that I was right back to where I had started, right? No, the answer was no. I was still very burnt out, right? Like I'm still not feeling 100%. And I was expecting myself and holding myself to this standard that I had to immediately go back to doing all the activities I was doing before. Got to get back to my Pinterest, my Instagram, revamping the YouTube channel that I really want to relaunch by the end of the year, being a full-time medical student that gets good grades. Like I was just like, oh my God, that just seems like so much work. I couldn't even fathom getting back to it. It just seemed super daunting. And I was like, wow, there's nothing quite as strange as thinking, wow, being me is daunting. Like going back to what I was is daunting to me. Because it makes you question, like, are those things for me? Are those things going to be feasible for me moving forward? Is that sustainable? And the answer is it can be, right? Maybe you are actually doing way too much. Perhaps I am, but I just was really being hard on myself for not being able to return so quickly, bounce back so quickly in this lovely fast-paced society that we all find ourselves in, where you just have to be producing or being productive all the time. And I'm not immune to that. I think a lot of the times I feel this sense of imposter syndrome because, you know, I run a wellness blog or whatever. I talk about mental health a lot. I go to therapy. That doesn't make me any better or immune to the attitudes of society that I'm supposed to be a productive human. Heck no. And I think just like getting back to feeling that way was really weird. So that was just another area of life that returning from being, acutely depressed or whatever was kind of strange. And then the final space was probably just like relationships, both with like myself and with other people, because people were checking in. Some people were checking in, being like, hey, haven't heard from you, hope you're all right. And I gotta say that those kind of messages and stuff like that means a lot, because it means that you're aware of how I normally am, and that there's like a deviation. I think a lot of people feel very alone or sad, or just like, who cares anyway? If they have this like change in the way that they're feeling, they feel really bad from when, how they normally feel, and no one notices. And sometimes it's because we're really good at masking it, okay? I can be very good at masking my anxiety and stuff like that, but I'm not very good at masking depression, okay? And some of us are really good at it. And so to like succeed, you may just hide those kind of things, but it does feel bad when people don't notice like that you need help, because it doesn't feel great to ask for help, right? So like we're like, okay, well, I hope you notice, but I also hope you don't notice. It's this strange duality where it's like, I hope the people who can provide me with some assistance notice, but I hope no one else does. And it's like, no one can read your mind like that. And so I think I was going through a period of like, for the people who did check in, I was like, I really appreciate that, but I have also like no energy to respond to you. But then for the people who didn't notice, it almost felt like, oh, you really don't notice I'm really struggling right now? That kind of sucks. It feels not great. And I want to share that experience specifically to validate you if you have been in that situation where you feel like nobody notices your change in moods, like when you go from feeling good to feeling bad. Because it might just be that you're really good at hiding it. And it's not necessarily that people don't care, but it's that people are not like as emotionally intelligent as we wish they were. You are valid in your disappointment at that. And it is absolutely necessary still, even though that sucks, to share your feelings with people who you trust them with, because they can't read your mind. And they may not know what's the best for you, right? Sometimes they were like, I'm going to leave her alone. I'm going to leave her alone because she needs that space. And I appreciate that. But after a period of time, I needed to come out of my room. And my roommate, she's great. My roommate Stephanie's great. She kind of like made me leave my room and, made me a meal and like tried really hard to just kind of like get me back into the groove of things. And I can't overstate how helpful that was for me. Just to like know that someone was actively caring and trying to help. And not all of us have that person, and I acknowledge that. But I would just say like sharing your feelings with someone else, while horribly scary and tremendously uncomfortable, is absolutely very necessary, because someone might not even know that you're going through this really difficult time, because maybe you're really good at masking it, right? Or maybe they're just getting to know you and they haven't seen this side of you before. So don't let it discourage you. If it does, I think that that's valid, but like you're gonna have to share, right? And so that's something that I found like relationship-wise was different. And also just like, I remember like when I came out of feeling sad, like that like period of time, things just felt clunky and clumsy. Like I was so out of practice with interacting with people who I was close with. Even from like a texting perspective, like it just felt like, oh, I'm back. How has it been? It just feels very out of practice, right? It's like the way that we all felt when we came out of the pandemic. If you were getting back into in-person stuff and you're like, oh man, I really don't remember how to do any of this. I guess all of that's to say is that when you come out of a really dark, not so great feeling space, things are gonna feel unusual because you're in this liminal space. Liminal space is something that I learned about when I was in college as an anthropology major. It's basically an in-between spot between one state and another. So let's say in this case, one state would be feeling depressed, feeling extremely anxious, having an extremely not great mental health period of time. And you're transitioning to hopefully your baseline, which is maybe not like crazy ecstatic happy all the time, but like it is a step up from whatever the heck you were feeling before. And you're going from this transitional spot, you're going through it from not feeling good to feeling normal. And it's not going to be an immediate bounce back. You're going to feel this strange sense of I'm neither here nor there. And I have to sit with this discomfort of knowing that while I don't feel as bad as I did, I still don't feel good. And that's not a negative sign. I think I kept taking it as, oh my God, I'm going right back. I should have gotten back out of this much faster. And because I'm not, I'm heading in a negative direction. My healing trajectory is going backwards. I have to tell myself this very frequently, and so I mention it a lot. Your healing trajectory is technically always moving forward, okay? When it feels like there's setbacks, I want you to picture like a long path. You're not going backwards. You can have lows and highs along a path where you're moving forward. And you really just have to give yourself the grace to traverse those lows and highs that come along with moving forward. Even though it's not glamorous, it's not cute, and it's certainly not always enjoyable. But it can be if I normalize the fact that happens. Like, no one goes directly from being like, oh man, yesterday I was just at the lowest I've ever been. And then the next day you're like, oh, I'm just the highest I've ever been, right? Unless, there's another disease pathology at work there that I won't get into. It's typically not how it works. And so it's just one of those things where I have to give myself the space to transition. I'm allowed to take time to get from one space to another. I'm not going to feel immediately great. And if I feel awkward and clunky in the way that I have a relationship with myself, if the way I talk to other people feels weird, feels different as I get back to getting used to it, if I just don't feel the same joy that I felt out of the activities I was doing, that is not to be viewed as something that's pathologic, right? I need to stop viewing it as, oh my God, this means something's wrong with me. That's what I mean by pathologic. I think it's really easy for people like me who reflect a lot and perhaps reflect and overthink a little bit too much, and we see in so much into all of our behaviors, the first thing I think of is like, oh, I feel off. This means something's wrong. As opposed to be like, oh, this feels off. It'll pass, right? Those are two very different perspectives. One is seeing it as this is a problem, and the other one's saying, this is happening. That is a perspective that my therapist actually provided me when I was explaining the not so great time I was having. And it's something I'm really trying hard to work at, because I think as we move into this new sphere, especially where we are seeing the benefit of therapy, we're seeing the benefit of feeling our feelings and reflecting on the things that are going on, and we're deciding, you know what, I'm actually done with that intergenerational trauma nonsense. I'm not interested in that. So let's heal so that we don't have to continue re-traumatizing future generations, right? That whole renaissance of mental health matters and the fact that it's growing is fabulous, right? But if we have the perspective that everything that feels off is wrong, it may make a entire space where suddenly I am judging the way I'm feeling constantly. That's not really what the goal of reflection is. It's not to judge, it's simply to learn and to observe, right? Yeah, you can learn from the things that you've done wrong in the past, and I think that's very important. But I don't want to view my entire life as a giant series of things that are going wrong, right? I can reflect and observe and not judge. And I can reflect and I can learn from things, right? And I think you have to balance both of those things. And so I think it's really easy for me as someone who overthinks a lot of the stuff I do. Like if I go into a conversation, I talk a lot, and I often worry that I am being too much for other people. And, I mentioned this in another episode. If you are worried that you're too much for other people, it is highly unlikely that you're actually the person who's in those conversations who ends up taking up way too much space, because you're reflecting in the first place. And the people who take up a lot of space in conversations and like aggress upon other people and often just like don't get the hint are not people who are reflective, like most of the time. And so we get into this space where I'm just like judging myself based on my own reflections on my own behavior. And I kind of have to take a step back without the perspective that everything is wrong and see objectively what are the facts here. And that is something that takes a lot of practice and I'm not good at and I'm trying to get better at. So if you have any suggestions, do let me know. Because I think it's something that is going to help us a lot as we move, like I said, into this much more mental health focused period of space in our society, right? It's so easy to read all these books that are, trying to be helpful and are helpful to a degree. And then we start finding all of these pathologies, these things that are wrong with our thinking as of the books that we're reading. And then suddenly you're finding all these things that are wrong with you, right? As opposed to validating your experiences and being like, yeah, you know what? I did have that experience. And that might be why I do things the way I am. There's two different perspectives, right? And I just want to give myself the grace to not judge myself so harshly. These were just some of the revelations I really had as I came out of this not so fabulous depression episode of sorts. I'm happy to be out of it. I'm happy to be back making the content that I really enjoy and talking with people. But it really does give you some perspective as to how complex we all can be, and how I don't have to necessarily have a certain period of time represent my entire being, right? Because I'm still that very happy to be here, likes random Studio Ghibli references, K-pop listening to human that I am, even though I had 4 weeks where I just didn't recognize myself. And perhaps maybe you've had a period of time where you've gone even longer, where you did not feel like yourself. And I hope that if you do find yourself in that space again, that you find the support that you need, because that's a really difficult thing to deal with. And I'm really glad that I had mine. And as you come out of that you give yourself the space to transition back to normalcy, because listen, you just been through a lot. You're obviously going to have some time to readjust to things. Most people who undergo a major life event need time for adjustment. And so viewing, really difficult times in your life as just the same as like that's a major life event that really affected the way that you interacted with the world and were able to function, you should give yourself the same amount of time and space and energy and grace to readjust back to how you would like to live. All that's to say that I hope you are doing well, and I've missed being here. And if you are here and you made it to this lovely 30-minute mark, thank you so much. It's honestly something that makes me feel very happy to do. So I hope you have a lovely rest of your week wherever you are, whatever time it is, and that you give yourself the grace you need to transition between states. if you so find yourself in between. That's all I got at this, for me, this late night rambling. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll be back again soon.